All right, beyond awesome here. Today we have DougZ. How's it going, Doug?
Good. Hi.
So, DougZ, tell us how you first got into Dominion.
How I first got into Minions. So, I have a friend, Wei-Hua Huang, who is, you might know as the designer of Roll for the Galaxy, also worked with Tom Lehman on Race for the Galaxy, some other games. He brought back Dominion from some sort of game aficionado like conference he'd gone to or something. So I played it a couple times. And then through Tom, who also publishes at Rio Grande Games, they'd gotten a sort of, a testing copy of Prosperity, as I recall, and we're testing that. And so that's how I gotten.
Oh, wow. Interesting. So, yeah, I believe that he was he a playtester on Dominion, if I remember correctly?
I think Tom, I don't know if they were official playtesters at the time. I think they're listed in the credits as playtesters for some of the later expansions, but I can't remember if they are for Prosperity.
Yeah, because I think he was a playtester. At least that's if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
All right, so you got in around when Prosperity was being playtested.
Yeah, that was early 2010, I think.
That sounds probably. I mean, because Prosperity came out in 2010, so that sounds about right.
Yeah.
So tell us then how.
And
Go ahead. Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, I remember I was having dinner with Wei-Hua and a bunch of other people, and we were talking about Dominion, and he mentioned that Donald had written this sort of test program for Dominion called CB Test, and but it wasn't networked. It would like track the cards and piles and stuff, but sort of everyone had to update their own copy every time someone did an action. So that's obviously, not ideal, and it's better than nothing, but not great. And I said I might be interested in, it sounded fun to like write a thing that would support all the different cards and stuff, and maybe they could use it for playtesting. So that was kind of how I got started.
Yeah, so that is how Isotropic was born. Is that correct?
Yeah, they used it to playtest Prosperity, and I don't remember exactly if it was they were getting started on the next expansion. Which maybe was Hinterlands. God, I used to know this like on the back of my hand, but I can't remember any of it anymore. And I asked Donald if there was any possibility that I could make a server that was open to the public, and he was okay with it. I mean, there were some conditions, but that's how it got started, really, or that's how it got started as a public service.
All right, and it was very popular, and it's actually still popular with some people to this day.
Yeah, I've always suspected. I mean, it was great when it was popular. It was like really fun. It was kind of my first time running a service that people actually used, so that was kind of an experience. But I always kind of wonder if like people's nostalgia for it is kind of misplaced. Like they remember it as being better than it actually was, and if I put it back up now, they'd be like, "Oh, this, kind of sucks." I don't actually know. Like, the current online implementation, I don't think I've ever played. I messed around with the previous one, the GoCo / making fun version. But my understanding is the current one is better, but I haven't tried it.
They're different. The Goku and the Shuffle It one, they both have their pros and their cons. Overall, I think most people like the newer one, but there are definitely things that there's still room for improvement, and I think everyone can agree with that. So I'm not dissing it because I use it all the time. I love it. I love playing Dominion. But yeah, I mean there's pros and cons. Like the Goku one, they had the campaigns, and with this one, there's some things you have to do through the log, so it's a bit awkward. But I'm sure it's going to be worked out at some point.
Right. Yeah. I mean, my version. I think the sort of quote professional versions, they look a lot prettier, and I think they're a lot more beginner friendly, because I know at least with GoCo, right, the goal was to get a lot of people playing. They wanted it to be, the next big thing. So they had to introduce a lot of people to it, that hadn't played the physical cards. Whereas my version was clearly like, this is Dominion for people who know how to play Dominion. It's not, there's no hand holding. So that's
that is definitely a difference. Although in some ways, Shuffle It does not all of its new user friendly like the Goku one. So that's what I'm talking about. So to me, I feel like the newer version is kind of in between Isotropic and Goku. In my opinion. So, but it's been a while.
Oh,
it's been a while since
maybe I'll have to try the current one.
You should, just give your thoughts. Say, this is what this is like. At least you can give some perspective. But I played Isotropic when it existed. I actually started playing around Hinterland, so I used it for about a year or so. I remember it being very fast to use. And I felt it was pretty user-friendly because he had pictures, and the pictures kind of made it easy to follow. Maybe not as much movement that like there is now. Which reminds me, how did you get the pictures? How did you come up with the pictures or select them for Isotropic?
The pictures are actually the ones that Donald printed on his playtesting cards. Which he just finds through like Google image search or whatever. So, severe copyright problems probably, but yeah, he would actually send me. So he makes, or I don't know what he does these days, but at the time he made these sort of ping images that were 3x3 cards that you would print out. And I just cropped the pictures out of those and used those in Isotropic.
Right. So Donald X came up with the pictures actually.
Yeah.
Right. I actually knew that, but I think a lot of people did not know that. So that's actually why I asked the question. Because I actually met Donald X once and played with him. So I saw his playtest cards. I'm like, oh, wait, those are the Isotropic arts right there.
Right. They were his first.
But I just wanted you to say, so they could hear you explain that, because some people probably didn't know that. So,
and actually, there were a couple cards where I picked pictures because for whatever reason, like he sent me versions that didn't have pictures or something, or he just sent me text of like cards that we were trying. This is on the playtest version. I think this card was released. There was a card called Envoy, and I had a picture of like the GM SUV, which he.
Right.
I don't know if he got it, but he was like, "That's not what I meant," and I was like, "Yeah,
yeah.
Send a replacement picture, and I'll change it."
Yeah, that was, I believe, the first promo card. So that card's pretty.
Okay.
That's been around for ages, if I believe.
Yeah, one of the things he wanted, like when I asked about putting up a public version, one of the things he wanted to be very clear on is that there wasn't any possibility of like releasing playtest cards, that there wouldn't be any, and I was like, yes, I'll be very careful. So he was very concerned that we not sort of spill the beans on future expansions. So.
Yeah. I know that he definitely does not like spoilers, so that's very important. Respecting that's very important.
Yeah. So
you haven't played on the new client, but do you still play Dominion at all, or?
I'm not as much. I don't play board games at all as much as I used to. I haven't played Dominion in a while. Just when I get out, I tend to play lighter games, or more sort of party games that work with larger numbers of people these days. So no, I haven't actually played Dominion in a long time, and I don't think I have the last 2 or 3 expansion sets even. I used to have them all, but then they made more.
Yeah, there are more new ones coming out in November, so 1 month.
Is that Nocturne?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm pretty excited. But so if I understand correctly, you were actually still, even though Isotropic was down, you were still programming playtest cards up through Empires. Is that correct?
That sounds about right. I remember various cards. Like I think there were knights and like some piles that had different cards in them. There were some kind of castles. Is that a thing that's been published? I hope. Uh,
Yeah. Castles. Yeah, castles have been published. So what we shouldn't go too much because if you say something that wasn't published, that would not be good.
yeah. No, I was pretty sure it was published.
Yeah. Castles were published. Yeah.
But I think that was I think that was the last set that I did. He was introducing more and more mechanics. Like there's debt now, and I don't think I ever implemented debt. There were a lot of new mechanics that sort of required going into the existing code and changing a lot of existing stuff. So I kind of lost enthusiasm for doing it. Like if the public server was still up, I'd probably do it. But for the 10 people who are playtesting to playtest, I just wasn't that interested.
It sounds like it's a lot of work, or is it? I mean, I'm guessing it's a lot of work.
It varies. I mean, vanilla cards that are like plus some cards and plus some coins and plus some buys, right? Those are easy. You can knock off 10 of those in 10 minutes. Cards like Possession are like, there's whole swaths of code just for dealing with Possession.
I imagine. I prefer to imagine that card doesn't exist, but it does exist. So that's...
You don't like Possession?
It's caused, I think it feels like it's always caused nightmares, but it causes even more problems now since Empires came out.
It has these weird interactions with newer mechanisms. Like, you get the cards, but the original person gets the tokens because the Possession card doesn't say anything about tokens, right? So, like, is that really what was intended? I don't think so, but that's kind of how it works out. And so you have to go back and make sure that all the old cards work correctly with new mechanics.
Right. Well, no, it got errata. So now the player that's possessing gets the tokens.
Well, see, I didn't even know that.
So. Yeah. So yeah, it got errata. But the cards it's a pain in my opinion. And there usually are. I think every implementation of online implementation Possession has had numerous bugs just pop up. Often in unintuitive ways, like, oh wait, there's another Possession bug.
Right.
You come from a programming background, and so you previously worked at Google, correct?
Yes. So I worked at Google a long time. So I transferred to the self-driving car project about 3 years ago now. And then at the start of this year, we got spun off into a separate company. So technically, I'm no longer a Google employee. I'm a Waymo employee. But it's all, within Alphabet, our corporate parent. So I'm kind of at Google, and, I kind of haven't changed jobs, but I'm no longer technically at Google.
So I just want to say that I'm a really big fan. I'm really excited about self-driving cars. I know there are a lot of people that are really nervous about the idea, but ever since I heard the concept 10, 15 years ago, I've been a huge advocate. I think it's gonna I think it's gonna reduce a lot of traffic and fatalities with driving.
I hope so.
That's the hope. I mean, there's obviously programming things like that. You can't go too much into it, obviously, because there's a lot of confidentiality stuff, all that. But what can you say about that? Because that's pretty cool.
So actually, I mean, I can kind of talk about what I do, because not being an expert on robotics or machine vision or machine learning or any of the sort of, super technical stuff, I'm on the team that sort of does plumbing. Like, we do the communications libraries that let the module talk to each other, and we do the OS thing that, the operating system that the self-driving software runs on top of, and all that sort of stuff that you need to do to have a product, but, is not, is sort of well understood programming. So that's what I do.
Okay. All right. So have you driven have you been in, has the car driven you, right? Because that's
yes, I've taken rides in the car.
Right.
I mean, we always have, so far we have always had test drivers in, at the wheel that can take over. So it's not quite the experience of like being in a car with no one else and not driving, but I have been in the car when it was, driving itself.
So we can say that in Soviet Google, the car drives you, right?
something like that. Yes.
I don't know. That's I don't know. But by the way, how can I test drive one of these cars? Because it sounds pretty cool.
We actually have so we're starting to do what we call the early rider program in Phoenix, Arizona. So move there and sign up and get picked, and then you'll get to ride in the car.
Well, what if I drive to like Google? Because I live in California. I mean, it's a bit of a drive, but what if I drive over there? Any chance that I could like if I say, hey, I know DougZ, can I?
I don't think I have that much pull.
Well, that's that's unfortunate, but that's cool. All right. Well, one of these days, I mean, eventually that's all there's going to be, right? One day there'll just only be self-driving cars, and you'll be like, well, this is boring now.
Right. And it's surprising. I mean, it's a little surprising to me how quickly it gets boring. Like the first time you ride in one, it's like, oh, cool. Is the car going to do the right thing? And is it going to stop? Does it see that thing? And then by the fifth time, you're like, when are we going to get there? Like, it's just, it's like when you take a cab, right? It's not like the driver or that they're a good driver or
right.
whatever.
Yeah.
You just kind of believe that the system will work. And I find that it becomes the same with self-driving cars.
Right. So you might not be able to answer this question, but I imagine that with the self-driving cars, that the amount of programming, for safety and the unaccountable. I mean, I have to imagine that there's so many variables that are so hard to account for. Is that the case?
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I mean, we put a lot of emphasis on safety, but I don't really know any of the details. It's kind of not my area.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely. I mean, I imagine that there's just so many unaccountable things that you just have to think about. That it's like, well, how does the car park in like LA? How does it? It's like, where do you find? How do you park in the middle of the street in LA? How do you? Because I understand like the goal is, I know. I mean, Uber's different, but Uber they want to pick people up, and it's like a lot of these places there's nowhere to park. How's the car going to actually know to stop, and what's going to happen? Like I have all. It's like, or what if it's like the rain's really hard? Like, are the sensors going to go haywire? I mean, I'm sure they're figuring that out. I mean, I know they're figuring out. It's just, I'm curious. That's all.
Yeah, I can't really tell you.
Right. Yeah, that's understandable. All right. Well, anyway, so I mean, this is about Dominion, so people probably want to hear more about that. Although I'm sure there are lots of people interested in the self-driving cars. All right. Now for the fanboy, for the Isotropic fanboys out there, this question's for them. So will Isotropic ever come back?
I guess if Donald and Rio Grande let me, the code still works as far as I know. I haven't actually tried it in a long time. It needs some work to get up to speed. But, I suspect it will not as long as there's a commercial license.
Right. And is it true at some point that, since we're talking about the license, were you approached ever to make the official licensed version of Online Dominion?
No. I mean,
no.
To be honest, my understanding, and maybe I was wrong, is that when I asked about putting up a public version, they already had an agreement with someone. I imagine GoCo. They were called Fun Sockets at the time. I thought they already had plans for that, and it was just it was expected to be up, and then it kept getting delayed and blah, blah, blah. So Isotropic ended up being up for longer than anyone thought it would. But I don't think they ever asked me. And I would have said no.
Okay. So the reason you would have said no, would it be because of time commitment, or
it would have been hard to do at the same, and keep my job, which I wasn't willing to, I didn't want to form a startup. Especially if I wanted to try and make money from it, or, does that mean ads or paid subscriptions? And then you need customer support and just all this stuff. I did it for fun, and the parts, what would go into making it commercial wouldn't be fun.
Yeah, you got a point there. I mean, you look at the GoCo forums or even the Shuffle Lit forums. There's just so many demands, so many customer complaints. I imagine that's like a lot of stuff to read through, and just a lot of time devoted just to that. It's annoying, especially you're trying to program and then to have to deal with that on top.
Right. Like, running it just as a hobby, like, I could sort of justify to myself if it was broken, then maybe it had to stay broken for a little while. Like if I was at work or, just couldn't get to it or whatever, and people could live with that because it's free. A commercial service, you can't really do that, especially if people are paying for it. It really changes the dynamic. And I just wouldn't have been interested in sort of, making that my life.
That's understandable. That is definitely, yeah. I definitely see what you're saying there. But while it was up, I want to say, thank you for making it. It's.
Oh yeah, my pleasure.
And thank you, thank you for you must have put a lot of time into it and effort. So, on behalf of all the Isotropic fanboys and everyone that enjoyed it, thank you for putting your time up there and making that happen.
Well, I'm just glad that so many people enjoyed it. Like it took off like way beyond what I ever thought. Like I think when I launched it, I like sent a private message through Board Game Geek to like 2 or 3 people who were frequent posters and seemed like they might be interested, and like it just kind of took off from there. And I was blown away by how popular it was and how much people liked it. So that was fun.
Yeah, you had thousands of people on it, right?
I think the most. So there was a limit on the number of users, just because there was only so many that it could handle at once, and I think the maximum user limit was a 600. So that's as many simultaneous people as it would ever support. Which is another reason, like to commercialize it, I have to make it bigger.
Right. Yeah.
But I don't know, probably thousands, over time. Because obviously not everyone is logged on 24 hours a day.
Right. And non-Dominion wise, though, Isotropic still exists, correct?
I mean, it's my personal domain. Like, that's where my email goes. And I run... I sort of use the Dominion code as the basis for another game called Innovation, which is another card game that I like to play that seemed like it would be a fun challenge to implement. So that server is still up if you want to play Innovation. But it's very, very different from Dominion.
I know some people on the Dominion forums do play Innovation. I have not played it. Well, actually, I tried once, and the main thing is that just I don't know the rules. So the thing about Dominion is I played it in real life first, so I know the rules. But with Innovation, I have to actually buy the game, play it in real life before delving. Right. Otherwise, you feel like how do I play this? At least that was my experience.
Yeah, Innovation is it's very hard to learn, I think, from my implementation. It takes up a lot of room on the table. Like if you're playing with physical cards, it's just like there's a lot of piles and stacks and whatnot, and it's kind of hard to compress onto the screen in a way that makes sense, especially if you're not that familiar with the game. So,
right, is Rio Grande, are they also the publishers, or is it a different publisher?
No, it's a different publisher. It's Asmodi Games, at least in North America. It's a different publisher outside North America.
Right. Okay. All right, I wasn't sure on that. I've seen it before. I looked it up on Amazon because I was curious about it. And actually, your implementation is what made me curious about it. Probably other people too. So you probably helped them get a few sales that way. People are like, what is this Innovation? I have to.
I hope so. For me, it just has that fun quality of it's like hundreds of different cards, and each one of them is kind of individually fairly simple, but they have interesting interactions. Like it sort of is that same space in terms of programming as Dominion, of like lots of little cards that interact.
I am now curious. I'll have to buy the copy of Amazon and then play it and then play your version. I mean, not your version, but your...
I recommend starting with just the base set. Don't try and learn it with the expansions until you're familiar with the base.
Right. I'm not your version, but your implementation, because obviously it's it's the. So this question was from Seprix because he wanted me to ask you a question because we had technical difficulties earlier. So
right.
His question was Star Wars or Star Trek?
So like a month ago, maybe it's not even a month, I just finished watching. I got the new TNG box set that has like all the remastered like high def. So I've been watching a lot of Star Trek lately. So I don't know. I like Star Wars, but it just doesn't come out often enough. Like I want more of it. Star Trek has a more voluminous universe, so I like them both. I don't know. I can't pick one.
TNG is really good, by the way. I that's my favorite series.
Yeah, I think DS9 is my favorite, but the TNG, this new box set that they remastered is gorgeous. Like they did a really good job of it. So it's a pity that DS9 was filmed on video, so they can't do that for DS9.
I did not know that about DS9.
Yeah.
So speaking of Star Wars, have you seen the new trailer?
I have not. I try to avoid trailers. I wait till the movie comes out. Like I like to go in not knowing anything.
So
I back when the first set of prequels came out in, I don't know, 98 or something, I did the whole thing where we bought the midnight tickets and we stood in line and we, were all pumped, and then it was such a terrible movie that I just kind of like I stopped getting excited about Star Wars movies. Like I really liked 7.
Yeah.
But, I just like after 1, 2, and 3, I was like, I'll see it eventually. I'll see it in the theaters, but I'm not going to be there on opening day.
Well, for most movies, there are a lot of people that get really excited for the movies, and I still see movies on opening day just because I like to see it with an excited crowd and everybody else is like pumped up. But nowadays, I mean, I think for the last 5 or so years, maybe longer, I've been my expectations for pretty much any movie are kind of in check. Like I don't really have high expectations when I go see a movie. I'm like, my expectations aren't like the other people. Like, oh man, this movie's gonna be so awesome. I'm like, I don't know. Let's see. I'm like, they're in line and you're in line and they're all pumped up, and I'm like, I like your energy, but I'm not gonna let my expectations to. I've learned my lessons enough, so.
Yeah. I'm not a huge fan of crowds, so I just as soon go when wait a month and go when it's less crowded.
Just a couple more questions for you before we go. So now there have been a lot of expansions for Dominion, and we've had recently Adventures and Empires come out.
Right.
So what is your opinion on the new expansions? I know you haven't played a lot recently, but from what you have played, what
to be honest, I haven't played any of them. Like, I think I have Adventures. I can't actually remember. Was Guilds before Adventures?
Yes.
I have Guilds. I know I have that one. I think I don't have Adventures, but I think I implemented it. So I just, it got kind of like, to be honest, even when Isotropic was like going strong, I wasn't that much of a player. Like I really enjoyed implementing it and testing it and, getting all the details right, or at least trying to. I didn't love playing as much. Like it kind of, I don't want to say it, for gaming for me, especially online, like gaming for me has been a social activity. Like Dominion's fun because the way I play, you don't have to pay too much attention. You sit around and chat with your friends while playing this game. Like online, people are much more serious about it, or at least usually, unless you're playing with someone So I don't know. I didn't love the experience of playing online, but I liked that everyone else did.
So now that my last question, or what I think is my last question, unless something pops into my head, have you met Donald X?
I have not. He lives in Berkeley. He lives like within driving distance from me, at least assume he's still there.
Yeah, no, yeah, he does. Yeah, he's up there somewhere. So,
and a couple times he, back when we were sort of interacting a lot, he mentioned like, oh, I should come to one of his game nights or whatever, but it just kind of never happened. And then I'm not very involved with Dominion anymore, and he was working on other games, and so no. As a matter of fact, I've never been him, but.
All right. Well, maybe one of these days. I mean, he's not too far from where you are. So for the 20th Dominion expansion, I know Donald actually keeps saying that he'd rather be working on other games rather than Dominion, but more and more expansions are coming out.
I don't know. I get the impression like he's always said like he likes to make games people want to play, and if people want to play more Dominion expansions, that's what he makes. So I don't think he doesn't want to do it. I don't think he would. I just think there's also an aspect of like what sells, right? A new Dominion expansion probably has some core of dedicated people who will buy it, whereas a new game is a crapshoot.
That's the unfortunate reality, and I think for the gaming market, especially the board gaming market, not only is the competition tough, but it's very hard to sell a new game these days.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't actually know that much about the board game industry. Like, what I know of, I hear things from Weiwa and indirectly from Tom, but they are both, relatively successful, especially Tom. So I'm not sure that that's, the whole picture of, and I think to some degree, like there are designers whose name sells games, or at least gets people to try them, whereas the same game from someone no one's ever heard of might have a harder time. So it's a tough industry, I think.
So anyway, that's it for my questions. So Doug, was there anything that you wanted to add? Anything that wasn't covered that you think that the Dominion community would be very interested in hearing? Maybe any stories or
stories. I can't think of anything that I haven't said already. There's sort of the origin story, and then that's about it.
All right. Well, it was great having you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for doing this podcast. I think a lot of people are going to enjoy it. So thank you for being the guest today.
Well, thank you for having me.